John had always been curious about the stars, but he never imagined that one day he would be sharing his small apartment with an alien. It all started when the interstellar exchange program announced a unique opportunity. Humans could host alien visitors from distant planets. Most people were skeptical or even scared, but John felt excitement bubbling inside him. He wanted adventure, something extraordinary to break the dull rhythm of his ordinary life. When he opened the door to meet his new roommate, he was stunned. Lyra didn't look like anything he had seen in movies or textbooks. Her skin shimmered in gentle waves of blue and violet, and faint patterns flickered across her arms like living light. Her eyes, large, round, and glowing softly, looked like twin galaxies, curious and bright. Yet despite her alien appearance, there was something gentle about her. She smiled in a way that made John's nervous heart feel at ease. "Hello," she said in a voice that was soft, musical, and almost echoing, as if it carried small notes of another world. "I am Lyra. I hope I am not intruding." John laughed nervously. "No, not at all. Welcome. I'm John. I guess we'll be roommates." That simple exchange was the start of something John didn't yet understand. He had expected awkward silences, misunderstandings, maybe even fear. But Lyra had a calm, observant way about her. She tilted her head, watching him like she wanted to understand every part of him. Not just his words, but the way he moved, the way he breathed. The first few days were strange but exciting. Lyra asked questions about Earth, about simple human habits, and seemed fascinated by the smallest things. The smell of coffee, the sound of rain on the window, the way cats purred when they were happy. She tried cooking human food once, mixing ingredients with delicate precision, her alien hands moving in ways that looked both graceful and otherworldly. John watched her, amazed at how a being from another planet could be so curious, so attentive, so human in her desire to connect. John couldn't help but notice how she observed him too. He caught her looking at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't noticing, watching him read, watch TV, even brush his teeth. At first it made him uncomfortable, but slowly he realized it wasn't judgment. It was awe, respect, genuine curiosity. Lyra seemed to find wonder in the ordinary things that John had taken for granted for years. One evening, John sat by the window, staring at the city lights, and realized he hadn't felt this alive in a long time. Before Lyra arrived, his days had been routine, empty. Work, sleep, eat, repeat. But now there was a spark, a feeling that life could be extraordinary even in small, quiet moments. Lyra came to sit beside him. "You seem thoughtful," she said. "Are you happy?" John paused. He had never asked himself that question seriously. He realized that yes, he was happy, more than he had been in years. "I think I am," he admitted softly. "It's just, everything feels different now." Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Difference is beautiful," she said simply. "It shows life is alive. It shows courage. You humans are remarkable." Her words touched John in a way he couldn't explain. He had spent so much time doubting himself, feeling ordinary, feeling small. And yet, here was a being from another world, seeing something in him that he hadn't even noticed himself. That night, as John prepared for bed, he felt a strange warmth in his chest. He was excited for the days ahead. Something told him that living with Lyra would not just be an adventure. It would be a journey that could change him forever. And deep down, he wondered if Lyra had already changed him, simply by being herself, curious, gentle, and unafraid to see the world and him exactly as it was. The next few days passed with a comforting rhythm. John woke up to the soft glow of Lyra's presence, always quiet, always observing, always learning. She had a way of noticing little details that humans often missed. How the morning sunlight hit the walls, the slight creak of the floorboards, the way the wind whispered through the trees outside. It made John feel like he was seeing his apartment, his life, for the very first time. One Friday evening, after a long day at work, John decided to cook himself a simple dinner. Pasta, tomato sauce, nothing fancy, but it was something he enjoyed. He hummed softly as he chopped vegetables, the knife moving rhythmically through onions and peppers. The kitchen smelled like home, warm and familiar, and for the first time in weeks, John felt completely relaxed. He thought he was alone. Lyra had mentioned going for a walk to study urban wildlife, and John assumed she was still outside. He didn't notice the faint click of the apartment door sensor that signaled her return. The rain had started lightly, drumming softly against the window, and John focused on stirring the sauce, completely unaware of Lyra standing silently behind him. Lyra froze, startled by the sight before her. It was accidental, completely unplanned, but her curiosity was piqued. She didn't move, just watched. She had been studying humans for a while now, observing their habits, their gestures, their expressions. But this was different. This was raw, unguarded, and deeply human. John, completely oblivious, hummed and turned to grab a pan. That's when he realized, too late, that Lyra had seen him in a private moment he never intended anyone to witness. Panic hit him instantly. His face burned red, and he froze, unsure where to look. The familiar embarrassment of being seen in a vulnerable state was magnified 1,000 times, because it was Lyra, an alien being. Someone so far beyond him, now witnessing something he thought was entirely his own. For a long, tense moment, neither of them moved. John felt his heart pounding, threatening to burst from his chest. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Lyra blinked, her glowing eyes wide with surprise, and it seemed as if time itself had paused. Then something unexpected happened. Lyra's face softened. Her eyes, so vast and full of light, didn't judge. They didn't mock. They simply reflected curiosity, and something else John couldn't quite name. It was awe, wonder, a quiet reverence for the human form, for human vulnerability, for life itself. John wanted to retreat, to disappear into the kitchen or under the table, but he felt rooted to the spot. He realized, with a strange mix of fear and fascination, that Lyra was seeing him, not as an object of ridicule, but as something alive, fragile, and real. He felt exposed, yes, but also noticed. Truly noticed. Lyra took a small, cautious step forward. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft, trembling, like she was afraid to break the fragile moment. "You are remarkable," she said. Her words were simple, but they carried weight, as if every syllable had traveled across galaxies to reach him, not in appearance, but in being. "You are alive. You are human, and that is beautiful." John's panic began to fade, replaced by a rush of emotion he couldn't control. He had never felt so seen, so understood, so human in the presence of another being. Lyra's eyes held no judgment, only fascination and quiet admiration. It was the kind of moment that changed someone inside, the kind of moment that made ordinary life feel extraordinary. He swallowed hard, trying to gather his thoughts. You think I'm beautiful?" he asked, his voice shaky, unsure if he had heard her correctly. Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "Yes," she said simply, "because you are real. You show life in its purest form. You are human, and that is a wonder." John's chest tightened, and he felt something shift deep inside him. That ordinary day, that simple evening in his kitchen, had become extraordinary. He realized that life wasn't just about what he did or how he looked. It was about simply existing, being alive and allowing someone else to see him as he truly was. And in that moment, with the rain softly falling outside, John understood that his world had already changed. Lyra had seen him, not just his form, but his humanity, and that was priceless. The apartment was quiet, save for the soft patter of rain against the windows. John tried to act normal, stirring his pasta and humming softly, but inside his heart was racing. He had never felt such a mix of embarrassment and fear. He had always thought of himself as private, careful, even cautious. But now all of that seemed meaningless. Lyra had seen him in a way he never intended, and he didn't know how to face her. He wanted to turn around, to apologize, maybe even explain himself. But as he slowly raised his head, he froze. Lyra was standing there, just a few steps behind him. Her glowing eyes were wide, shimmering with something he couldn't read at first. Fear, curiosity, admiration. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the look on her face. "John," she said softly, almost like a whisper, I did not expect this." He swallowed hard. I didn't. You weren't supposed to." His words stumbled and fell apart. Every muscle in his body felt tense, frozen in embarrassment. His mind screamed at him to leave, to hide, to disappear entirely. But Lyra didn't move closer. She simply stood there, calm and still, her eyes holding him in a gentle, unwavering gaze. The tension in John's chest refused to ease. He could feel his face burning, his palms sweating. How could someone from another world see him like this and not laugh? Not recoil? Not think less of him? And then slowly her expression began to change. The initial shock softened into something warmer, gentler. Her eyes, glowing softly, seemed to mirror the rain outside, shimmering, alive, and full of light. She tilted her head slightly, studying him as though she were seeing not just his body but his soul. "You are remarkable," she said finally, her voice trembling but sincere. "I have seen many forms of life across the stars. Many strong, many clever, many powerful, but you are alive in a way I have never witnessed before. Vulnerable yet strong, human, and beautiful." John's mind struggled to process her words. He had been expecting ridicule or surprise or maybe even disgust, but not this. Not admiration, not awe. His embarrassment began to melt, replaced by a strange warm feeling he couldn't name. I don't understand," he whispered, still unsure if he had heard her correctly. You think this, me, is beautiful?" Lyra nodded. "Yes," she said simply. "Not because of form, not because of perfection, but because it is honest. Because you are human. You exist, you breathe, you feel. That is extraordinary." The words sank into John's heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. For years he had worried about appearances, about what others thought, about fitting in, and yet here was someone from another planet. Someone who had seen life in ways he couldn't imagine, telling him that his very existence was amazing, that the smallest, most ordinary moments of being human were worth marveling at. John felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had never felt so exposed and yet so seen. Lyra's gaze held no judgment, no teasing, no malice, only quiet wonder. The embarrassment that had consumed him moments ago faded, replaced by something entirely new. Pride. Pride in being human. Pride in being alive. Pride in allowing someone else to see him fully. The rain continued to fall outside, soft and rhythmic, but inside the apartment, the world felt still. Time seemed to stretch, holding that delicate, precious moment between them. John realized something he had never thought possible, that a single glance, a single accidental moment could change everything. Lyra took a cautious step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You are real," she whispered. "And real is a treasure." John swallowed, his chest tightening with emotion. He nodded slowly, a small smile breaking across his face. He understood now. This was not a moment of shame. This was not a moment of judgment. This was a moment of connection, a rare, precious bridge between two worlds. And for the first time, John felt something he had never felt before, completely understood. For a few seconds, John could only stare. The initial shock of being seen had passed, leaving him in a strange mix of relief and amazement. Lyra's eyes, still glowing softly, held a light he couldn't name, a light that seemed to see into him, past the surface, past all his walls. And then slowly her expression shifted. At first it was subtle. The corners of her lips twitched almost imperceptibly. Then, a small smile spread across her face. A smile so genuine, so tender that John felt something warm bloom in his chest. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't pity. It was awe. Pure, unfiltered awe. "You," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft rain tapping the window. "You are magnificent." John's eyes widened. "Magnificent?" he stammered, his voice cracking slightly. He had never been called that before. Not by friends, not by family, not by anyone. And now, here was an alien being from a world he had only read about, telling him something he had never thought about himself. Something he had never dared to believe. "Yes," Lyra said softly, stepping closer but still keeping a respectful distance. "Not because of strength. Not because of skill. Not because of perfection. But because you are human, vulnerable, alive. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, every movement, it is a miracle I can witness. And that is extraordinary." John felt his throat tighten. Words failed him. He wanted to explain, to apologize, to make it less awkward, but he couldn't. Nothing he could say would capture the mix of emotions he felt: embarrassment, awe, gratitude, wonder. He could only stare back at her, unsure if he was dreaming. Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him. "On Zarathia," she continued, "we observe life. We see creatures strong and clever, fast and cunning, but rarely do we see beings who are simply alive." fully, completely, honestly alive, and you carry life in every part of you. That is remarkable. John felt a shiver run down his spine. Her words were like a light that reached into the deepest corners of his insecurities, illuminating something he had forgotten, that simply existing, simply being human, could be beautiful. It wasn't about appearance or achievement or perfection. It was about living, feeling, breathing, being real. I never thought of it like that, John whispered, his voice shaky. I always felt ordinary, invisible, nothing special. Lyra's smile deepened, her glowing eyes softening. Ordinary? She repeated as if tasting the word carefully. There is no ordinary in life. You think in human ways, you feel in human ways, but that is the wonder. That is the miracle. Being human is magnificent. John felt a lump rise in his throat. He realized that Lyra's reaction, her awe, her reverence, her simple honesty, was something he had never experienced in his entire life. He had been seen, truly seen, not as an object, not as a mistake, not as a joke, but as a living, breathing, fragile, incredible being. And it changed him. For the first time he laughed, not nervously, not awkwardly, but freely, fully, like the sound carried all the tension out of the room. Lyra's laughter joined his, soft and musical, and it felt like the apartment itself was alive with warmth. The rain outside seemed to sing along, tapping a gentle rhythm against the windows. In that moment, John understood something fundamental. Life was not about hiding, not about fear, not about perfection. Life was about connection. Life was about being brave enough to be seen, and being lucky enough to meet someone who could truly appreciate it. And as he looked at Lyra, standing there with awe in her eyes and wonder in her smile, John knew that this accidental moment, terrifying as it had seemed, was one of the most precious moments of his life. It was priceless. After that evening, something changed between John and Lyra. The air in the apartment felt lighter, warmer, charged with a new kind of understanding. It wasn't just the curiosity of an alien learning about human life anymore. It was connection, something deeper, something rare. John realized he no longer felt the same nervousness he had felt before. Lyra had seen him, truly seen him, and it was freeing in a way he couldn't explain. Days passed, and their routines became small rituals of companionship. John would make coffee in the morning, and Lyra would watch, fascinated by the simple steam rising from the cup, her glowing eyes following every motion. She asked questions, not awkward or intrusive, but gentle, thoughtful, as if every human action was a treasure to be understood. John began to share more than he had planned, talking about his dreams, his fears, even little embarrassing moments from his childhood. And Lyra listened, not judging, not laughing, simply marveling at the human experience. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the city, John found himself sitting beside Lyra on the couch, watching the sky turn golden. He felt a strange mixture of pride and vulnerability. He realized that the moment she had seen him, the one that had terrified him, was no longer a source of embarrassment. It had become a bridge, a point of intimacy that he had never imagined sharing with anyone, let alone an alien. Lyra turned toward him, her glowing eyes soft and thoughtful. "You are brave," she said quietly. "It takes courage to live openly, to let others see the truth of who you are. Many beings hide behind appearances, masks, even lies, but you do not hide, and that is beautiful." John felt a lump in his throat. Her words reached deep inside him, touching places he didn't even know were sensitive. For so long, he had measured himself by standards that didn't matter, worried about judgments that were meaningless. And now, hearing Lyra speak like this, he understood that being human, being vulnerable, imperfect, alive, was something extraordinary. I never thought anyone would see me like that," he admitted softly. "Not really. Not completely." Lyra's gaze softened further. "I see you," she said simply. "Every part. Not just what is easy or perfect or strong. I see your laughter, your mistakes, your fears. And all of it is magnificent." John felt a tear slip down his cheek. It wasn't sadness, but release, relief, gratitude. Someone from across the stars, had given him the gift of seeing himself through their eyes. And in that gift he discovered something he had forgotten, the beauty of being human. They sat together in silence, letting the world outside fade away. John felt a deep, quiet joy he had never known before. He realized that life wasn't about hiding, or pretending or trying to impress others. Life was about connection, about being seen, about allowing someone else to witness your truth, and about accepting it yourself. For the first time, John didn't feel ordinary. He felt remarkable, not because he was special in some flashy way, but because he was alive. Because he had allowed himself to be human, fully and completely, and because Lyra, with her soft glow and her alien wonder, had shown him how magnificent that could be. That evening, as the sky darkened and the city lights began to sparkle, John felt a quiet pride swell within him. The fear he had felt that night when Lyra had accidentally seen him was gone. It had been replaced by understanding, by connection, by something far greater than embarrassment or shame. He smiled at Lyra, who returned the gesture with a gentle, glowing smile of her own. In that moment, John understood something essential. Life was not measured by strength or power, but by the courage to be seen and the grace to be valued for simply existing. And as the night settled around them, John felt more alive than he ever had, more human than he had ever known, and infinitely grateful for the alien who had reminded him of the wonder of being himself. The days that followed felt different. John noticed a warmth in his chest that hadn't been there before, a quiet, persistent joy that grew whenever Lyra was near. Their connection had deepened in ways he never expected. It wasn't just curiosity now. It was understanding, respect, and something that felt almost like friendship, but more, something neither of them had words for yet. Every morning, Lyra would quietly watch John as he moved around the apartment, noting the small ordinary things humans did. She marveled at the way he sipped his coffee, the way his hair fell into his eyes, the tiny smile that escaped when he read a message or remembered something funny. John had gotten used to it, but instead of feeling self-conscious, he now felt seen in a way that filled him with quiet pride. He realized that Lyra's admiration was not shallow. It was deep, sincere, and genuine. One afternoon, John found Lyra sitting on the balcony, gazing at the city below, her glowing eyes reflecting the sunlight. "What do you think of humans now?" he asked casually, though his heart thumped in his chest. Lyra turned toward him, her eyes shimmering. "Humans are fascinating," she said softly. "Fragile, strong, brave, and sometimes beautiful in ways they do not even know. You are no exception. You carry life in your being, and it is remarkable to witness." John felt a lump in his throat. He had always been self-conscious, always comparing himself to others, doubting his worth. Yet here was Lyra, an alien who had seen countless worlds and beings, telling him that he was remarkable simply because he existed. He realized then that being human in its raw, imperfect form was extraordinary. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. They spoke about dreams and fears, hopes and regrets. Lyra shared stories of her home planet, the vast oceans that glowed under twin moons, forests taller than skyscrapers, skies that changed colors with emotion. John shared his childhood memories, his favorite books, the quiet fears he carried. In each exchange, he felt his soul opening, stretching in ways he hadn't thought possible. One evening, as rain softly drummed against the windows, John found himself sitting closer to Lyra on the couch. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke quietly. "You make me feel seen, truly seen, and I don't know if I've ever felt that before." Lyra's eyes glowed softly, reflecting both the rain and something warmer, deeper. "I see you, John, not just what is easy, not just what is visible. I see your thoughts, your courage, your heart. You are alive, and that is precious." John felt tears prick his eyes. He realized that this bond, this connection with Lyra, was unlike anything he had ever known. It was built not on words, not on shared meals or chores, but on the simple act of truly seeing one another. And in that seeing, a trust had formed, delicate and profound. Over the following days, they fell into small, quiet routines that spoke volumes. They cooked together, sometimes laughing when a dish didn't turn out as planned. They watched movies, sharing observations that made each other laugh or think. They talked late into the night, their voices low and intimate, sharing stories that neither had told anyone else. John realized that he had started looking forward to every moment with Lyra. Not because she was alien, not because she was extraordinary, but because she made him feel extraordinary just by being himself. Her presence reminded him that life, in its purest form, was worth marveling at. That being human, flawed, ordinary, vulnerable, was something to be celebrated. not hidden, and as he watched her smile softly at something he said, he knew that this bond, strange, improbable, and yet undeniable, was something rare, something worth cherishing, something that made the world, even in its ordinary moments, feel magical. The rain had stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. John sat on the couch, watching the reflections ripple across the wet pavement. Lyra was beside him, her glowing eyes calm and thoughtful, and for the first time John felt a sense of peace he hadn't known he could feel. Their bond had grown quietly over weeks, through small conversations, shared meals, laughter, and moments of vulnerability. But tonight it felt deeper, more real, more unshakable. John glanced at her and smiled softly. You know, the night you accidentally saw me, I thought I'd never be able to face you again. Lyra's eyes twinkled faintly, reflecting both the city lights and something warmer, almost like a private glow. I knew it would frighten you, she said gently. But I also knew that you are extraordinary. You are human. You are alive. And seeing you, it was a gift. John felt a lump rise in his throat. That gift had changed everything. It had opened a door he hadn't realized was locked. A door to understanding himself, to embracing who he was without shame, without fear, without hiding. That moment of embarrassment had become a bridge to something incredible. Trust, admiration, and a bond that no galaxy could match. I never thought anyone could see me like that, John admitted, his voice soft but steady. And not just see me, but actually appreciate me. Not for what I do or what I achieve, just for being me. Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes gentle and sincere. Being human is remarkable, John. Every fear, every hope, every small act of courage, it all matters. You live fully, even in moments you consider small, and that is worth celebrating. John smiled, feeling the warmth spread through him. For so long he had compared himself to others, measured his worth in invisible scales of success, strength, or popularity. But Lyra's words reminded him that human life, in its fragile, imperfect form, was extraordinary. Simply existing, being vulnerable, showing who you truly are, that was a courage unmatched by any feat across the stars. He reached out and gently touched her hand. Lyra didn't pull away. She let him hold it, small sparks of soft light dancing along her skin. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. For seeing me, for teaching me to see myself. Lyra's smile deepened, her eyes glowing a soft, radiant blue. And thank you, she said, for allowing me to see you. To witness life in its most honest, beautiful form, that is, a treasure. John felt tears well in his eyes and he laughed softly, a laugh full of release, full of gratitude. He realized something profound. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders, but none of them could compare to the miracle of being human. To be alive, to feel, to connect, to allow someone else to see your soul, that was priceless. That was heroic in its own quiet way. The apartment was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It was full of warmth, full of understanding, full of life. And John knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what adventures or dangers the universe might bring, he had discovered something unshakable, the extraordinary power of being human, and the extraordinary gift of being seen. Lyra leaned slightly closer, her glowing form radiant in the dim light, and whispered, "You are magnificent, John, do not forget it." And John, looking at her and feeling the truth of her words in every beat of his heart, smiled like never before. He didn't need strength, skill, or galactic conquest to feel extraordinary. He was human. He was alive. And in the quiet, simple truth of that realization, he was more powerful than he had ever imagined. That night, as the city slept and the stars shimmered faintly in the sky, John felt something rare and precious: pride in his humanity, awe in the life he carried, and gratitude for the alien who had reminded him of how truly remarkable it was to exist. And in that quiet, glowing apartment, two beings, human and alien, shared a moment that would last forever. A moment that celebrated life, courage, and the simple, unshakable beauty of being seen. The end.